school committee to order. We will begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I just wanted to remind everybody that this meeting is being recorded in your image and will always be broadcast. Public comments. Justin?
Good evening, I'm Jessica Degley-Alberti, and I'm from Boylston. Last meeting, there was much discussion about the school calendar and the half-day professional development. As a nurse practitioner in PCP, professional development or continued education is vital for me to keep up to date with medical research and medical recommendations. It also helps reinvigorate my practice and passion for my job. Teachers also have to stay up to date with new teaching techniques and also respond to testing results. Last school committee meeting, we heard from all the principals from the Ames Web results and also the fundamental program that has helped close the gap to national standards pre-pandemic. The teachers learned about those teaching techniques and interventions during staff meetings, but also professional development duties. The principals and the superintendents also mentioned that half-day or 2-hour PD sessions seem to be more effective because it enabled them to check back and see if their new skills are being effective and discuss with their peers how to improve. Last meeting, the comment was made that the PD half-days were robbing time on learning from the children and cheating the system. I clarified that the time on learning, and apparently the time on learning, including the half-day professional development days, is above the state requirements. Professional development also helps give teachers higher job satisfaction because they're up to date on effective teaching techniques. This might be something to pay attention to when teacher burnout is at an all-time high. The other issue I wanted to address was the HVAC upgrade. I sent an email to all the school committee members regarding this concern. I know it was in the works, question of funding, especially for BES being the oldest building of the 3 schools. Aside from COVID, air quality is extremely important to the health of our students and our children. There are also the hot September and June days where teaching is impossible in the sweltering classrooms. I hope COVID is over, but we still need to pay attention to what the Omicron BA2 variant is doing. It's now 55% of all COVID-19 in the US and has already caused a large surge in the UK. I hope and pray that does not happen in the US, but ignoring the trends will not serve us well. Thank you.
Thank you, Jessica. Any other public comments? Has anyone received any communications that they would like to share? I just wanted to announce that we still have an open seat in Berlin. This position is by the time you're sworn in, probably a 5-month commitment. And all of our seats are up for re-election in November for our regionalization agreement. It's a great opportunity for someone who wants a short-term commitment or someone who's interested in possibly running for election in November. If you're interested, please send your resume to either myself or Christy Turgeon, and you can find our emails on the website. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented?
So moved.
Second? Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
I'm an aye as well. Opposed? Motion to approve the consent agenda as presented passes. And we're on to our election presentation.
So our intention this evening was to just be available for any questions from anyone who might be interested in running for the election or want to know more about the election. There's been a number of questions, I think, since the regionalization happened. So we just want to open up the floor to anyone who's here. I have a couple folks here, I don't know whether they're here for this or not, but kind of open to that if anyone here has any questions on the election.
I think, could you give a general overview of what's required of the positions?
Yeah, good question. So I think you guys could jump in here too. You know, obviously we meet fairly regularly. You know, and I think it was more regularly in the last couple of years, given some of the challenges that we faced. But generally speaking, right, it's typically 1 meeting a month with the second meeting held, and it should be used in a given month. The role of the school committee is really threefold. It's first to set policy for the district, second to hire and evaluate the superintendent, and third to review and approve the financial budget for the school district. So at the end of the day, those are the three primary roles we have. I think we find in the course of a meeting, we might talk about a lot of other things, but they all kind of roll up to one of those three responsibilities as we as a group are responsible for ensuring the district is well operated and that we are responsible for that. We're still waiting from a timeline standpoint on folks who might want to take out papers. We expect those to be available sometime this month. We're waiting for the Secretary of State's office to send that information down to town clerks into the district. Christy, I expect you're going to get something in the mail from the Secretary of State's office. I spoke with them a couple weeks ago. They did confirm they got the letter we sent.
Okay.
So it's just a question of when they can get that information out, not only to us, but to all the regional districts that have elections in November.
And then once people pull papers, they need to get signatures.
Correct.
Support.
So Mike, you don't know if any signatures here, right?
No, not yet. I think that'll be in the information from the Secretary of State.
Yeah, typically 2025,
That's what we've been told, yeah.
yeah, that some will want to get either from Berlin or Boylston or both. And there'll be a process to get the papers they need and then collect those signatures to then be added to the ballot. One of the things that's a little unique, I think, about this particular election is that those who take out papers are going to have to choose whether they're running for one of the 2-year or 4-year seats. There are 2 4-year seats in Boylston and 1 2-year seat. In Berlin, it's the opposite. 2 of the seats are 2-year, 1 of the seats are 4-year. And that was done in a way to create a staggered situation every 2 years thereafter, so that after this 2022 election, in 2024, there will be 3 seats up for election. The 3 2-year seats that will be expiring, those 3 vacancies will be for a 4-year term. So from 2024 onward, every seat will be a 4-year term. From a requirement standpoint, my understanding is you really don't have to be a resident, but I don't have to be a registered voter in Boylston or Berlin to take out papers to be able to run for school committee.
I think you just have to be 18.
18.
Yeah. I checked with NISD.
Mhm.
So that's good to know as well.
Mhm.
Anyone else?
Any other questions or comments on the role of the school committee? So I would say for anyone who's interested in learning more or potentially becoming a candidate, feel free to reach out to Mr. Topman or myself on the subcommittee for elections, or obviously Lori as well. We're happy to answer any questions that you have to whatever extent we can, but we wanted to make sure we were here and available for any questions that might come up today, given that papers will be available likely before our next meeting in May. And so that will be the opportunity to learn more.
Do you know when the deadline will be to have them in by?
I believe it's quite a while after April.
It's a few months. I think it's June. They have to be into the towns. We have the documents online. It has a timeline. They have to be into the towns. The town clerk will certify the signatures. You have to keep your signatures straight if you're collecting from both towns. Berlin on Berlin papers, Boylston on Boylston papers. And then once they're certified, they'll let you know you're responsible for them collecting them and sending them into the Secretary of State to be put, for the names to be put on the ballot. And that process, that deadline, I believe, is in August.
Sure.
Good time.
Yeah, all those timelines are kind of forthcoming from the state. They'll be setting
Yeah.
Definitely
specific
adjust,
dates.
depending on something.
Yeah, the exact date is not yet known, but.
But it's good to know that it's not really soon. It's just-
You have
No,
time.
there's plenty of time.
So when the towns have their meetings in May, people will still be able to take out papers at that time.
Yeah.
When those town meetings are happening too, so that's another place where we want to have, or ask the selectmen to make an announcement of the fact that these seats are open and that any interested candidate can use the town clerk or the district clerk myself to get papers.
Any other questions? Okay, we're going to move on to the report section. Mr. Minion, did you want to present or did you want to just discuss?
How's it going? Shall I sit?
Whatever, wherever you're comfortable, whatever works for you.
Sure. Well, I'll just. So this is my first time proposing the field trip. So I'm not sure what the protocol is, but I believe everybody has read the field trip itinerary. It's a field trip, which would take place on the 7th of May, I believe, which is a Friday. And myself and the 8 students, juniors and seniors who are in my economics class, to include Rebecca Hart, the daughter of one of the committee members. We would take a flight from Worcester Airport, which leaves at 7:30 a.m. And gets into JFK at about 8:30, and then take public transportation into Lower Manhattan and visit the 9/11 Memorial and Museum associated with it. We would be in the area of Wall Street. The New York Federal Reserve, in years past, I've taken students to the Boston Federal Reserve, but because of COVID, the Federal Reserve's not doing tours right now. But we would walk along Wall Street and get a sense of that area, and then take public transportation up to Central Park and visit one of the museums. I reached out to Christy about, what types of things you might want to know about this trip. And I learned that 37.5% of the students in the class have never been to New York City, which is arguably the greatest city in the world. I learned that 87.5% of the students have never ridden the New York subway, which is an experience in itself. And we spoke about, or she said that you might be wondering why take a plane instead of riding a bus. The plane is cheaper, so the cost fluctuates. And whether once the trip is approved, whether it will get off the ground is, dependent upon the price of the ticket at that moment. So the price when I looked most recently was $82. And a bus to New York City is going to cost well over $2,000. It isn't really quicker in that we're going to be at the airport probably at 6:30 to catch the 7:30 flight. And then there is, an hour-ish subway ride from JFK over to into Manhattan. And a bus ride would probably take 3 or so hours as well. But there's an adventure component to it that, one of the things that I think we've talked about in public education is making connections with young people and doing things that are notable and memorable and educational. And it strikes me that going to New York City with a teacher that, I've known most of these students since I taught them in 7th grade, and have had a connection now over 5 or 6 years with them to do something unique, educational, fun, out of the ordinary, all that type of stuff, strikes me as consistent with what our goal in public education is. So that's the gist of the field trip. I'm happy to answer questions if people have any questions. Yes.
I love it. I read it earlier today and was excited to see that you're offering this opportunity. My only question is, given some of the recent challenges JetBlue has had with their flight schedule, what happens if your flight back to Worcester gets canceled that evening?
So I'm going to cross my fingers and hope that doesn't happen. It's
An adventure.
Yeah, right. So how would we deal with that? One of the other goals of public education is overcoming adversity. I don't have a specific plan for that. That hasn't been my experience. I fly JetBlue quite frequently, so I don't have a good answer for what we would do. I would sense that if JetBlue canceled the flight, that they would be under some obligation to provide some, a hotel or whatever. But I haven't really thought about that, to be honest with you. So I can't give you a better answer than that. And hopefully that won't happen.
I would guess there's a lot of flights back and forth from New York to Boston.
Well, sure, so, right, I mean, I think that, I don't think that we would be stranded forever, you know? And it would be, you know, might there be an inconvenience? There might we have to fly into Boston perhaps and then adapt to that? You know, that is a possibility. You know, like I said, I fly JetBlue a lot, and I've had very good luck with them. You know, but we'd adapt somehow and figure that out. So, other thoughts? Yes.
I think it's great too. I've read about your financial discussions around why would you operate a low-cost airline and fuel costs and all that plays into it. Just are all the safety concerns with parents taken care of and the liability issues taken care of with the subway stories that you're hearing about in New York?
Before I went further in terms of doing those things, I wanted to make sure that the school committee was going to okay it. And so once that takes place, if that takes place, then there would be a permission slip that the parents would have to sign. You know, sure, there are concerns about all kinds of things. You know, riding the subway, is it a little bit dangerous? Maybe, you know, but, and I mean, is it true that crime is rising in lots of places? Certainly. You know, what I would sort of say to that is I would hope that the parents, based on my, you know, long history at this school and my experience that I've had with these children and teaching with some of them siblings, that they would feel confident, you know, that I'm going to protect their kids and I'm not going to put them in dangerous situations. You know, and it's certainly a risk that you take, you know, when you go on the subway. One of the things that I think, you know, I went to high school in Boston, and my experience as a 14-year-old was being in the city. And so when I think about the young people that I teach from Berlin and Boylston, who aren't in the city, you know, having that experience of doing that type of thing is eye-opening. And so hopefully the parents will say yes. And if the parent said, you know, no, I don't really feel comfortable with my child doing this, then that student obviously wouldn't be able to go. But I feel fairly confident. I mean, I think that based on, you know, the couple of people now on the school committee who have spoken about it, that you seem supportive of it. And your endorsement of, you know, the safety of it and my experience as a teacher should convince the parents, and there are only 8 kids, that this is, you know, not unduly dangerous.
No, I agree. I think it's great. I did a similar experience when I was a kid, and you're right, it is eye-opening. It changes your outlook on many things, and I hope more people do more trips like this coming up.
Yeah, it's fun. It's, you know, something different, and
There's a great candy store right next to Central Park.
right. So we have perhaps some, you know, unscheduled time to do, you know, what strikes us, you know, and if the spirit moves us to go to the candy store, so be it. If
Or
it's
east side of the park.
right, so if it's something different, you know, I mean, whatever you're interested in, you can find it in New York City.
I want to say, I think this is a really bold move, and I mean that in a very positive way. A lot of people are like, you know, we're coming back, we're easing into things, and there's so much to do and so many great things to learn, and I really think that this would be a wonderful opportunity. It would be cemented in the kids' heads, and they would remember not only the experience, but all of the things that they learned. I appreciate the fact that you were willing to give up your time as well.
Yeah.
Because that's a lot of personal time.
That's a labor of love.
It really is. Thank you. I appreciate it. Anyone else have any questions? Okay, so what I was thinking is, at this time, I would like to move the vote from item 8, section K to now, as to not hold Mr. Minningham here. So I would like a motion to approve the Tohoto, New York City field trip for May 6, 2022.
So moved.
Second,
Second.
discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
I'm an aye as well. The motion to approve the Tohoto, New York City field trip, May 6, 2022 passes.
Outstanding, thank you.
That's awesome.
Thank you.
And thank you, I appreciate having the opportunity to speak. Have a great rest of your evening. All right, thank you all.
Appreciate it. Next on our reports, Mr. Zane.
I just have a couple things. First, I'm just gonna go out of order here. First is the calendar. So we made the edits that school committee suggested last meeting. The only one that there's still a question about was Good Friday. When I read the association's comments about the calendar, I thought they were asking, or they were asking if we could have Good Friday off. They were actually, I couldn't have gotten more of it. They were actually asking if they could be a full day of school. And there is a piece in the contract that allows them religious holidays. So it is up to you, but I thought it's fair to just bring it back and say I misinterpreted what they were saying. So on this calendar, it's a full day of school. If you're good, based on what the association wants. If that works for you, knowing that that contractually they can take a religious holiday if they need one on that day, they're allowed to. That they would be able to use it on Good Friday. So
We've had some Good Fridays in school and some off, correct?
since I've been here, we've had it off, and in 1 year, school committee member wanted that changed. And so we went to full day of school. So
Have there been a lot of absences that day, or enough that they could handle it?
nothing that sticks out in my head, no. Nothing. So you can vote on it as is, or you can vote on it to have Good Friday a day off. We'll make the correction and we'll do that. We've made all the other changes you talked about. So that's the only one. Again, I own that one.
And just to confirm, Joe, we're not reducing any of the available professional development hours for teachers to do because they're still going to receive.
Yeah, no, it's-
They would have received, correct?
No, yeah, everything will be the same. We made all the adjustments in the, final day and things. So the only question is on that Friday. So, Good Friday.
Yeah, I just don't know what's the holiday on April 17th.
That's
I
Patriots
asked
Day.
you a question last
Patriots
year.
Day,
Yeah,
okay,
Patriots Day.
yes, thank you.
Figured that one.
Should have known, but yeah. All right.
So the 14th is the day in person, is that right?
7th.
It's the 7th.
Well, the 7th.
Any more questions on the calendar?
Oh, yeah, you have to vote on it.
Yeah.
Okay, now the equity survey, which we gave out. So I just wanted to make a couple things clear about this, based on some of the comments we received. This is part of our equity work, and we sent it out. We wanted something that was as thorough as possible. We sent it out just simply to collect data. We're not advocating for any programs, nor are we doing that now or espousing any points of view. So it was none of that. We just, and the survey came from some online work we went through, and, there were some takeaways when we looked at the survey, and so even though we wrote a cover letter, a lot of people didn't answer the question. They answered some, but up to, you have 200 people responded total, and in some of those questions, up to 50 people would not respond to the question. So I get the feeling that there was maybe a feeling in the community that this was being done, that there was something else behind it, like, that there was some kind of program that was going to be introduced as a result of it, and so I thought we were clear about that. So if we weren't, I'll make that point now. There is no program on the horizon because of this. is basically, every question you see in here is everything we do. We just wanted to formalize it. You know, if a kid is in need, whether they're struggling with one issue or another, we try to address that issue. So we just wanted to get the information so we could use it for some further work with it. So what we'll do is, we have the ability with the new survey tool that we have to break this down by school, break all of these responses down by school. And so what we plan to do next is to break it down by school, meet with the team that's doing the equity work, give each school their results, and then look at maybe 10 different areas or issues that have been common. Because then if BES is having, you know, they go through their 10 issues, Tohoto, and then BMS does the same thing. We'll see if there's any commonalities, because that would indicate that maybe those are the issues we have to sort of deal with in the district. And so, you know, some of these issues like the dealt with safety, does the child feel safe in school? You get 12 or 13 people who say no, and 200 respond. Well, I might think it's safe, but someone doesn't. So those are things we should look at. Once we find a group of questions that we think in the district we have to look at, then we'll start, you know, that'll generate another survey down the line to ask people some more in-depth questions. If your child doesn't feel safe, you know, could you give us some more information about that? So that's what the survey was about. There's a lot of questions. There was a lot of good information. Do you have any questions about the survey that you wanted to ask?
I'd be interested to know if the kids can take it.
Okay, so that's the other, I think I had that noted down. Yeah, so the next year, so the work we're gonna do right now is with the staff, and then once we find some areas, some common areas that we need to, that we think we need to work on, whether it be safety, whatever it is. You know, there's a question in there, we asked the parents about the curriculum, do you think the curriculum is fair and unbiased? So there were some indicators in there that somehow they don't think it is. So maybe that's an area we have to look at. We do some work to make sure it isn't. When we introduce new instructional materials, we do work to make sure it is unbiased. That doesn't slant one way or the other, but you never know. Someone, you know, so maybe that's an area we have to look at. Once we address that, we drill down a little deeper with parents. We're gonna do some work like that with students. We'll put a survey together, send it to parents, make sure they're comfortable with it, you know, before we give it to the parents, before we give it to students. And this will also go to our superintendent's advisory, which has parents on it. And they're the ones who actually went through this first and helped us with these questions. And they're all parents, and school committee members and parents. So we want to make sure we're not just putting this stuff together ourselves, that it's coming from the community. So we will do some kind of student survey, and it'll be next year. But we want to sort of unpack this ourselves first, so before we do anything with them. You know, and that's, you know, they'll give you the real honest answer.
Well, yeah, that's what I'm thinking, I mean, yeah.
Well, and some of the questions, if you look at some of the comments, the parents would say, I don't know what my student thinks about this. So, you know, and that's a very honest answer from a parent. You know, ask them, I don't know how they feel about it. So we will get to it. It won't be for this year, but we'll get to it. Thank you for reminding me.
When we get to the school by school, there's like each of those classes.
If you want, we can now, yeah. Christie? The school by school results,
Yes,
okay, we just,
Yep.
to the school committee, we could break, I had this, you know, it's just a push of a button now, so.
What did you guys think of the new survey? This is Survey Monkey now, right?
I think it was great, we didn't have any issues with it. I think that the biggest issue is all of the ways you can analyze the data. So we can do it school by school, we can make sure each group answers, you know, maybe answers only one time, so we don't get those duplicates unless we want. So it's a lot more flexible. Did you find anything else, Carol, about it to you?
No, I think that's exactly where to analyze that and several different ways. And I would offer more options for the survey taking too, that we didn't have approval. So worth the investment. Excellent.
And I think, one of the things we have to try to do is make the community feel more comfortable about the fact that we're just collecting data. And, it's not, we're not introducing any kind of programs and that stuff. We basically try to formalize, like I said, what we already do for kids. Kid approaches us, they have an issue, we always deal with it. Whatever they're struggling with, we deal with it. But thinking about, maybe there's other students who they're not coming forward, who maybe we need to deal with. Maybe there's more there than we think. And maybe there is an issue with the curriculum we have to look at. And if we don't do this kind of thing, that I know turns some people off, then we won't know. So,
There's some interesting answers.
Yeah.
yeah,
Some of the comments were.
yeah.
Just one general theme. A lot of these, there were a handful, like 1, 2, maybe less than 10 people who said something to the negative, to the fact that I don't feel comfortable based on my race or being included or whatever. I assume that's not the first time you're hearing from those individuals. Would there be only 1 or 2 people, you probably know them, so are you working with them to figure out what's going on without telling us or identifying anybody, but that was kind of shocking. Is this the first time you're hearing about that, or
Well,
are these issues known?
We don't know who's, we keep these anonymous, so we.
Yeah,
don't
but
know
when it's
who
one
does-
person saying they don't feel comfortable, I would imagine they've come to you already.
No, I haven't had anybody come to me well, I mean, I have I have my regulars that I talk to, you were one of them, Mike.
That's why I'm here, Jeff.
Not yet. But one of the things that occurred to me when I read the results is that some of these questions about, how did, what gender does your student identify? If you asked that maybe 10 years ago, some people would have just answered that question. I think in the climate today, the climate we have today that's polarized, I think that's probably why you get people to think, oh, there's something else going on. This they're trying to get at something else. So,
To the anonymity point, I wonder if perhaps next time this goes out, we might give people a chance at the end of the survey to say, hey, I want to be anonymous or I want to be contacted. Because there were certainly some people there who might want to hear back from. the
Good point.
administration and-
Yeah, that's a good point. As we said at the end of the survey, maybe there's an option that we say, do you want to be anonymous or do you want to be contacted? Because some people might want to think personal, so, yeah, good suggestion.
I like that. I hope for some of these people, though, if they really do feel this way, they're not waiting for a survey to come and contact you or the principal. I mean, some of them are pretty shocking, to be honest. One person was denied a religious day off or something like that.
That was for a wedding.
For a wedding, yeah. I mean, to deny it based on religious, I mean, some weddings are weddings, some weddings are very religious events. I don't know the situation, but they felt strong enough to put it.
Yeah.
I agree, as Andrew that felt that there was something that their child was missing off, it should be, they're talking to the administrator at the building to make sure that they're being heard.
That's a good suggestion, to put something there and say, do you want us to contact you, do you want to contact us? Because maybe, some people are afraid, especially, but one of the things I learned, I was in another district that had a high minority population that was, I didn't realize this till, was in the community for a while, they said, that they're not gonna come to you, they're just not gonna come to you and say anything, because, in the country, they just, it just doesn't happen. I mean, they'll be too afraid that there's some repercussions if they talk to you, so. Maybe there's some of that too, that they're afraid there's gonna be repercussions if they speak up, so. This is baby steps, this is the first time we've been doing this work, so we're still learning it ourselves.
And then this is the last question before. The survey, how long do you expect before, the data's compiled, moves to a different school, they get the info? So I guess before the needle starts to move on.
Well, so we have this, we have a meeting, we're trying to schedule it for after vacation, probably early May, that will finalize our work on an equity statement, which is part of my goals. And in that meeting, we'll also start to break out work for, the schools. And so that will be, and then, so the goal would be by the end of the year to compile a list of, out of the 10 issues in each school, the top 10, maybe compile a list of 5 that are manageable, that we can start working on. So we're hoping to have that by the end of the year. That answer your question?
Doug, I'm just wondering, what happens to those transition kids? They go from 5 to 6 in a different school, would it be a different answer next year? Or this 8 to 9?
You mean in
What's
terms
all
of,
about?
in terms of a student survey?
No, the parents, like, I may answer differently next year, my child doesn't have the same.
So are you suggesting to do like another survey like this at the beginning of next year, or?
No, I'm just wondering what now happens with that data, right? It's the point of, because you want to do something with this, right? So now it could change significantly, because those kids have now moved on, all, or 75.
Well, that's one of the things we have to find out, is it school specific? Is it something that we, is it something that's happening here that's not happening in the elementary, in terms of equities? That's all, when you break it down by school, you'll be able to see that. Is there something that's happened in terms of equity when they move up to the 6th grade? And that's what we don't know. So we'll find that out, and break it out by school. So it's tough to plan that far ahead, because we don't know what that's gonna look like. I mean,
You plan on
you have a theory, but,
Right.
You plan on it being an annual survey, regardless of what time of year?
we didn't look that far ahead. That's something what's your take on it as a committee?
If you guys spend time trying to fix it, you might as well see if you fix it.
Yeah, well, yeah, no, but I mean, in terms of the same kind of survey.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure you can make tweaks and improvements, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we were hoping to, eventually distill the questions down and then start sending those surveys out to start kind of drilling down more. Because it's not that everybody doesn't count, but you have to start someplace. So you start with the areas that where most of the issues come from. So, go ahead, Carl.
The only thing I just wanted to add to your question, Julia, you would know this because it happened after we were meeting, but the principals do have to survey. It's broken down by their school. They have their specific school information now, as of today, this morning. So they're already looking at it, I'm sure. That'll help formulate what they want to address with their leaders that meet with us. And that'll probably be released at the end of April. So.
Yeah.
So to your point, they could be starting to look at, if it's a specific individual, but if they're seeing patterns, I think over time, or bigger gaps, I don't, in some of the areas that were often, like it's an often, we kind of think in our heads, oh, of course, we're doing it all the time. We're doing these wonderful things, all of our children feel safe, and all of our children feel happy, and now we see often, it's like, why? So, questions like that, questions come up with principals.
Because often indicates that something, like,
Yes.
most of the time it's good to hear this thing happen.
So
So,
they need to take more on that, right?
Well, and someone made a comment that there should be a middle ground, and I felt the same way when I was taking the survey as a parent, because it was always, often, rarely, and never. And there was no I don't even know what that middle one would be.
what was I just gonna say?
Yeah, I don't know.
Kind of sort of.
Kind of, sort of.
And we tried to work how many different.
Yeah, I know, it's-
words
that's the
that,
issue,
you know,
yeah.
to make-
So,
we want to
yeah.
know more about that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, if you get any suggestions, anything additional,
Survey wise, people will tell you you shouldn't do that. You want to keep it even because people will gravitate to the middle and then you'll get a lot of not useful information.
That's good to know, that's a good point, because they don't want to raise hand. Anybody have any other question?
Yeah, no, just if you have any other suggestions, we'll certainly implement that one, Adam, because that was a great one. And if you have anything else, just reach out. We'll keep you updated on where we are with it.
That's great.
Carol?
Thank you. In my report, I just wanted to make the committee aware that we do have a Student Opportunity Act, the 3-year plan that we had to put in place, or it's a requirement from DESI. And it's based on 4 commitment areas. It really looks at closing achievement gaps for students. And it speaks to the equity work that we've been doing as well. So I think that I just wanted to see what we were doing in those areas in case you hear about conversations around Student Opportunity Act. We're expected manually to make any amendments to this and to update the state as far as what we've accomplished so far. So I put that information in there, the budget we're spending. The SOA also helps us to get grants like the ESSER grants. We have to do that SOA and that gives us the opportunity to get those specific types of grants. So I didn't know if you had any specific questions on this. I think I did, sometimes in this act that we complete this plan, we didn't tie in everything we're doing in the district. For example, in the equity area, number 1, we didn't put in there for the state of 2020 that we were doing an equity survey because we didn't know we were doing it in 2020, but I had to do an amendment and added that piece onto it for this year. So there were several areas like that. So that's the SOA. If you had any questions about specific areas of that. And then the other piece that we have to vote on tonight is the acceptance of the grant, the literacy grant, accelerating literacy. We did get that. I spoke about this last time, that amount for our literacy program, 3 through 5. And late this afternoon, Desi, we have to go through several steps. With that grant, the first is the approval of the quote that we have from the publisher, with the publisher's heading on it to ensure that what we're telling them we need for our funding is what the publisher said, and we have to also have all of the materials in by June 30th. So today we heard from Desi that we did get the approval on our quotes that was accepted, and so the next step is to put the PO in to order the materials, so our teachers will have them in hand, and training will take place in June. So a lot needs to happen very quickly this spring. Which we guess. Right.
Does anyone have any questions? Thank you, Carol. Mr. Connery.
So, we have my report. The first item is the FY '22 Q3 budget update. I summarized it. There's a 1,000-line detail if you care to go through it, but the summary by kind of high-level categories in my school is shown on a one-page PDF. And at the end of the year, you'll need to approve the budget transfers. So on a quarterly basis, we just provide updates so that you can see the transfers between categories. We don't transfer between schools. There's no questions on that. I'll move on. The excess and deficiency filing was finally approved by the state. We submitted it on time. They tend to prioritize tax rate requests from municipalities first, so we waited quite some time to get the approval. Our EB was approved at $405,440 as of June 30, 2021. EB is kind of the regional school district equivalent of free cash. It's our cumulative surplus from the beginning of time of the school district to now. And we can use that to help subsidize our budget. We're using $150,000 in next year's budget. I anticipate we'll have a significant surplus at the end of this year that will kind of offset what we're using in next year's budget. The next item is, so there's no question on the first two, I'll move forward. The next item is the FY23 budget. We were able to identify some savings from restructuring the elementary ELA supports. And through that, the savings was basically the amount that we had proposed as an above level service request of $42,622.50. That savings, however, in Boston, we needed to apply to an unexpected out-of-district tuition that happened after we presented our budget to you, or that we became aware of after we last presented our budget to you. This will cover a substantial portion of that placement, not all of it, but we have plans to offset the rest of it. In Berlin Memorial, there were no offsetting increases, so the savings will go towards reducing their budget. Good news that Jeff and I received today, we reached out to both towns and we were advised that we had support of both towns on our budget with this $42,000 reduction to Berlin. So I did want to publicly thank the towns for their support. We had a fairly substantial increase, more than most peer districts I talked to. We certainly had reasons for that and worked hard to manage it. So later in this meeting, business time, we respectfully request your support for this. And we're pleased to be able to move forward after a pretty challenging budget process. Related to the budget, I guess both years, I want to give a shout out to Carol for finding this grant of $134,000. We don't, as a small district, often get these potentially large grants that are competitive, and it was hugely impactful and helpful to whichever year this would have been applied to. This is something that would have been difficult to pay for, but is much needed, and so she kept her eye on grant opportunities, and it's a big win for the district to get this type of grant. It's the biggest I've seen here since I've been here.
Bob, if I could just interrupt you for a second. You just said we often don't, as a small district, we don't get those types of grants, but
Competitive grant.
yeah, I feel like I've been here for what, like a little over a year.
Yeah.
And it's every other meeting, Carol's bringing us some sort of grant that she got, so.
Yeah, not this large, but yeah, she has. I was able to get a grant too, a couple grants, but 134,000 is kind of a different category.
Yeah, no, I'm saying that you're saying it's rare. I'm saying I feel like every month I'm hearing about another grant that's coming in from her, so I think that's awesome.
Yeah. So we've had a good run. So I just was calling out this one specifically because of the amount. And hopefully we can keep it up. I think, sometimes your district district's name is heard and they get confidence with people submitting the grants. So certainly I think when we see Carol's name as a grant, hopefully we can stay on the radar. Hopefully the cash gates keep open and stay open too. So the next item is just an FYI bid for years. In the gym at Berlin Memorial, there's an equipment platform that's kind of straight pieces of plywood that's not OSHA compliant, it's a security risk. We had approval, capital-wise to go out to bid on that. We went out to bid, the bid came in a little bit higher than we expected. We had a single bid, it was $202,000 from a reputable firm in state. They met all requirements of the bid. We awarded them the bid. We have $130,000 in capital funds that we're going to put towards this. The additional $72,000 will come from EMS School Choice, where we do have a healthy surplus. This is necessary where it's not optional. Would have been nice to have more competition, but we've also been advised by the engineers that help us with the bid, just that combination of contractor availability and steel prices and material prices have gone up. So it is what it is price-wise, but we do have a plan to pay for it. And that work will happen starting just after the end of the school year and is scheduled to be completed just before the beginning of the school year. And I mentioned to our school committee member, who happens to be the rec department director too, that James will be unavailable during that time. The next thing is I just shared the last meeting I had COVID, I wasn't here, but I had in my report something about information the town of Berlin requested as part of the budget process. So I just shared that as an FYI to you so you can see how to respond. Some of it was just providing information. One piece I wanted to comment on quickly tonight, probably we should talk about it more at a different time. I think it's something that I kind of want to leave as a recommendation to the committee as I go. There's going to be two things. One is reducing school choice. One is going to be providing funding for this OPEB trust. So I had to write that at the time of Jeff Lodge. Recommend to put as high priorities financially. The OPEB budget plan, the way we've had very little funding over the years. What it is it's basically the cost of this other post-employment benefits, it's healthcare costs for retirees. And we have an actuary that does a report on it to come up with a liability. The idea is that over time, they want, if you think about it, we're paying for costs that are not benefiting students in the district. These retirees, unless they're retired, don't work here, and there's no benefit to the education in the system. The concept is that we should try to get an OPEB trust funded so that this trust pays for these benefits. And so we're kind of setting aside money during the lifetime, during the work period of employees to pay for these, so it's not coming out of the budget. So that's the concept of the trust. Probably will take, 20 to 25 years to get to the point where we could develop it to fund that. The level we're funding it at now is fairly small, again, it's new, it was started about 6 years ago. We had an opportunity to put more in because my idea was a free month of healthcare. Kind of took that savings and applied it. So for FY23, the budget is to put in 2.5% of what we've budgeted for employee benefits. And to put 2.5% into the OPEB trust. What I've proposed as a plan is to increase that 2.5% by 2.5% more every year until it gets to 25%. At which point it would be around 700,000 a year. And I think at that point, you revisit it in 10 years because you're also going to have investment growth and returns. And I think that does it in a way where it gets the district to a much better place. In the spreadsheet I provided last time, it kind of gives you a sense of where it gets to over time, assuming honest investment return. And then you can revisit it. I also think there's variability. You can't predict what the market's going to do over the next 10 years. If it takes off, maybe you don't need to increase it as much. But I think to have a plan for 10 years is a good idea. I also think that the way they calculate the liability is fairly complicated and sensitive to interest rates, and actually as interest rates go up, just the way they calculate the liability comes down. So I don't want to go too much more into the weeds now. I'm happy to, if you think it's worthwhile, I think I have a presentation on it or share something, but I kind of wanted to leave something for the school committee and the district to have with my recommendation, and you can digest it. So I don't know, I'm going to give you an overview of it now. You're going to leave it there for now. And if you think it's worth putting on the agenda, it's fine in the future, or I can just write a memo and kind of leave it with you with what the plan is, so it's documented in the next business manager can kind of follow the plan. I think the next, year-over-year increase to a budget from FY23 to 24 will be like a $70,000 increase, so it's not, way out of the norm, out of whack, but doing that 2.5% a year kind of makes it manageable to fit into the budget. And you can see, you should still have capacity to invest in other things. So that's kind of the most important thing, I think, from that report to Berlin. There's some further information, but that's the one thing I wanted to call out. The next item is just an FYI. You had the opportunity to provide free meals to students this year. That, as of now, that's discontinued by the USDA. We will potentially need to look at our pricing, our meal pricing. I am hopeful, though, I've had some communication and seen some things that say the state is now considering potentially a 1-year plan to help continue free meals for a year. And there is some discussion, I guess there's some at least push, maybe from a couple of people at the federal level to look at it, but there's not as much optimism in something will happen federally. That is at the state level too. We don't quite know what the reimbursement rates will be. But certainly in terms of impact to families, I just wanted to kind of put this out there and make it public. If we get an update and get good news, we'll update you at the next meeting. What we hear about it. I should also share the letter to the state that I sent to the Director of Nutrition Services. And, I think there's a petition that I'm going to look to sign on to, just asking for either the federal or state to continue the program. And then, when I'm on the board here, the last item is the student activity guidelines. So based on consultation with our auditors, and I disagree with them, but they say that the school committee needs to adopt our student activity, I call it procedure manual, they do it as a policy manual, but it's student activity guidelines. It has special rules. It relates to all the clubs. Most of them are at the high school, like so the different clubs. Some of them have financial accounts, they do fundraising. There's a whole set of specific rules that apply to these accounts. And historically, this is where financial abuses happen in school districts, or just sometimes not intentionally, just misuse or misspending. These are intended for students. So this guideline was really developed following kind of a state model. So I basically followed that and we adapted it, in certain things, just to make sure they worked for our district. So this should get us to be compliant. And again, we were told that school committee needs to kind of adopt this. It's a long manual, so I apologize for getting it to you with short notice. This is the first read though tonight. If you have any questions in between now and the next meeting, I'm happy to answer them. There is a school committee policy regarding this that's kind of one page. I would recommend that, even though I would use this procedure, you would just leave a very brief policy and maybe leave it as it is and just say, add one sentence that says more detailed policies were developed by the school business office and have been approved by the school committee, and just stick a link into this instead of rewriting the whole thing. So.
Why do you disagree with them? Because it's just too much formality on it, so they can find them.
Yeah, I think they should say we should be following recommendations, but I think that we shouldn't have 35-page policies. And I view this as more procedural. I've talked to other districts who I hear mixed answers from different districts. Some districts said, well, we didn't have to do that, we just developed a manual and showed it to the auditors. So maybe it's just our auditors, maybe they're being more diligent, I don't know. But you can only, at some point you gotta just do whatever you say. And that's it, that's my report.
Anyone have any questions?
You ask 10 auditors, you get 15 answers.
What's that?
You ask 10 auditors, you'll get 15 different answers, as I understand.
Janelle?
Sure, so I'm gonna just provide an update on the at-home testing program, the COVID testing program, so that continues to be available to all of the staff and the students in the district. It's my understanding that that program will be available through the end of the school year. I haven't heard any differently. And so I've just provided you with some updated numbers there, talking about overall averages, about half of our students are participating and about 75% of the staff are participating. And so that means that in a testing kit goes home every 2 weeks to the family or to the staff member, and that gives them one test each week. And the request is that they self-report any kind of positive results. And of course, we're continuing to do the symptomatic testing in schools as well. So those are the numbers. The participation is good. It has sort of leveled off. It had ramped up after it had been in place or put into place at the end of January. It ramped up quite a bit in February and March, but those numbers are pretty stable now. I did add in the vaccination data. I know Christy uploaded a revised report for me today. So we really wanted to report this information and share it, attempted to use the same methodology that we had used to collect that data using our new Snap Health software program. We ran into some technical difficulties in getting consistent results between February and now. So we did end up using a combination of SNAP data and NERS data to provide these results. And for the most part, it seems as though the numbers, the vaccination rates are going up in all three buildings. We do have this question mark around the data around Berlin Memorial. Obviously, we recognize that can't even be accurate, but we've looked into it to the best of our ability, and we can't really understand why it's reporting a a 1%, a roughly 1% decrease in that number. But that's the data that we have. I'll be happy to report on it again next time, and hopefully that little glitch is working itself out. No changes to the reports of vaccinated staff at the buildings. As I had explained before, that is done on a voluntary basis. There aren't any changes there. And then just a quick report of the Wellness Committee. Each year, the Wellness Committee comes together and they really identify a focus area for the year. And it's, the second year in a row where it's really about the social and emotional well-being of staff and students following the challenges of a couple of years. They typically each year put together a project of some sort, maybe filling out a grant. Last year, I believe that they put out some, they added some furniture to the outdoor areas in all three buildings. This year, there's an effort to put together the exact language is a team building and joyful event for all of the district's staff in an upcoming month. So we're just the very beginning part of talking about that and putting that plan together. And then this really connects to what Bob reported on in terms of the food services update. Lauren is also part of the Wellness Committee, and she had talked about that initiative of there's a state level effort to extend the free lunch program in Massachusetts. And she cited that fact that I have in there that 26% of food insecure families don't meet the threshold for free and reduced lunch. And that's really a huge motivation for these groups to be providing those universal free lunches and trying to get that extended in the state of Massachusetts.
Anyone have any questions?
Yeah, I do. The second to last line there in your report says that physical education teachers have reported improvement in PE activities since masks became optional.
Yeah,
So that's good enough, but my follow-up question to that is, have any other teachers reported any changes in behavior, any sort of positive or negative effects since that happened? It's been a month now, so.
yeah. And my comment here is under the category of Wellness Committee, which is comprised largely of PE teachers, and so I did ask them specifically for their input. I have heard anecdotally amongst the schools that, teachers are enjoying being able to see their students' faces, and, they feel as though they're able to communicate more clearly with their students. So I do feel like overall, that's the impression that I've received from staff.
Kids are smiling. You can see.
Yeah, those facial expressions.
It's great.
I saw that line in there, and I just, Captain Obvious, I don't know. But it's great.
It's interesting, before the mask was still on, I was walking through, we were doing walkthroughs, I was walking through with Diane. And then we were walking towards that lunch to sixth grade, she said, I don't even know what these kids look like. Because there was a kid that was a senior, she clearly knew the kid and talked to him like, you're pretty good, you can tell all this. She goes, yeah, she goes, this group? She goes, I don't even know what they look like. Never seen them without masks. So, and some of them don't know what each other look like, different schools. So,
Sounds like it's all positive.
so far, yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Janelle. Great report. Mr. Mara.
Good evening. Again, as you see, my report is very brief. I really wanted to take just a few seconds to just reiterate the thank yous that I put in there. Deanne Tilla was a long-term employee here who helps out with the MCAS at Tohoto for the middle and high school. She's invaluable to Diane and Sally in terms of the amount of organization she does and kind of keeps a lot of that running without them having to have a lot of day-to-day interference with what's going on with MCAS. So again, I want to thank Dee. For those of you who live in Boylston and were part of that wonderful 5-second power surge that happened on Tuesday, you may have heard that definitely interrupted MCAS. It was quite the day for the tech department. So again, I wanted to call out Dave McCarthy. I think a lot of places would have just circled the wagons and called in all kinds of folks, and Dave and I were able to handle what would have been a major interruption and get everybody back and running in 80% of the building within a few hours and everybody by the following day. So, again, Dave is a fantastic employee. I wanted to just, again, call him out as part of keeping us going here with MCAS. CDRC, again, just quick note, we were able to compile and submit on time. It's funny, Jeff sends me all the emails of, that he forwards everything to me as if I don't get them. I do get them, Jeff, but, just making sure that we're staying on track. We are always probably one of the first in Massachusetts that always submit. And in my last report, I kind of mentioned that they never meet their original deadline. There's always software issues with the submittal, and of course this year there was as well. We were one of many districts trying to submit, but the software couldn't keep up with the amount of data flowing in. So we did, again, submit on time. We're submitted and certified. It's over 4,000 pieces of information about our schools and our kids and the classes they take and the various breakdowns of race and ethnicity in various areas. And again, I could not say that or with confidence that we would always be earlier on time if I didn't have Bonnie Moore, who does a fantastic job in compiling the data, staying on top of, she's already starting. Because of COVID, we're going to have back-to-back years. Usually this is every other year, but because COVID, we did not report last year, we are going to have back-to-back years, and she's already starting some of the data prep for next year. So again, a shout out to her. So that's my report. Got any questions? Thank you.
Negotiations Subcommittee. We had our first meeting on Tuesday, March 22nd, and we're going to be meeting again on Wednesday with the BBEA. And for the update on the Superintendent Evaluation Subcommittee, I actually have quite a bit. Just a heads up to the committee that on May 2nd, you're going to be getting an online link to the self-assessment of the committee, and it's going to be due by May 10th. I'll put all this in an email for you. And that we will have a report for you that will be presented on May 24th. And at that meeting, Mr. Zaney is going to provide a verbal update on his end of cycle progress, including progress on goals and performance. And at that point, we will begin filling out his superintendent evaluation. Any questions? All right, we go on to business items. At this time, I would like to entertain a motion to approve the 2022-23 school year calendar.
So moved.
Second? Discussion?
Yeah, I just want to make sure I understand the changes that were made. So I don't have the two versions up in front of me. You guys just, someone just summarize what's been changed from the original version to this one.
We took the professional development days that were half days, we turned them into full days. We took professional development days that were located on Fridays and put them more towards the middle of the week. We made that change to the Good Friday, now full day of school. I believe that's it. That's the majority of them, yeah.
And just to clarify from what you said earlier, the teachers had requested that Good Friday be a full day.
Yeah, full day of school,
Which is what-
I read it completely the other way.
Okay.
And that's how I presented it to you, and then so, when I talked to him, he said, no, we want the full day. So this calendar you're voting on has full day school for teachers. In their contract, they're entitled to 2 religious holidays.
Individuals, so if they choose to take a certain day as a religious holiday, they can put into that.
Correct, so, they're covered.
Am I correct, the last day of school is going to be half day on Monday this year?
For this
For
calendar
the
that we're
calendar,
going,
yeah,
yes.
yeah.
That doesn't include course days.
That's what we want, a snow day.
So we don't have a snow day.
That's if we don't have a snow day.
You need an extra 4 hours on the next Monday.
Any discussion?
Look at that, I want to get a snow day around next year. I appreciate the changes. I think it's a great idea that we're continuing to offer the correct level or the consistent level of professional development that we offer, and also make this able to new parents, so that, you know, we have, as parents have a very good plan around those full days, which, you know, are, I think I'll point into what Megan had mentioned last week, when the last meeting, we talked about this. You know, she kind of appreciated some of the balance that the full half days would give, but the full days are equally giving that kind of school life balance as well. So thank you for working on
All right, there's no more discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
I'm an aye as well, opposed? The motion to approve the 2022-23 school year calendar passes. I'd like to have a motion to approve policy EBCFA.
Move.
Mike, second?
Second.
Julie, discussion? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
I'm an aye as well. The motion to approve policy EBCFA passes. Could I have a motion to approve the Boylston Police Department and Berlin Police Department MOU with Berlin Boylston Regional School Committee? Julie, second?
Second.
Mike, discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
I'm an aye as well. The motion to approve the Berlin Boylston Police Department and Berlin Police Department MOU with Berlin Boylston Regional School Committee passes. I'd like to have a motion to approve the elementary literacy coach coordinator job description.
So moved.
Adam, second? Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
And an aye as well. The motion to approve the elementary literacy coach coordinator job description passes. I'd like a motion to accept the school choice recommendations.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Discussion? Adam?
Bob, a few minutes ago, you mentioned that one of your recommendations was going to be to reduce the, what did you say?
The usage.
Which was one.
Yeah, which means that we, partly because we're not taking in as much. And there's a little bit of an imbalance between what we're spending versus what we're taking in. I mean, over time, you might not have an option, you might just, if you keep going with the size of the classes coming in, you may be limited in what you can take in anyways, but. Did that answer your question?
It does. On that point, yeah, you know, I look at this and I think I mentioned last meeting that I view the high school and the elementary school as different situations. We have the scenario where we're seeing students who would expect to matriculate to ninth grade who are choosing to go somewhere else, and so there's a loss of students at Tohoto between 8th and 9th grade. So I understand in terms of how high school operates and those cohorts are set up that it becomes of value to have equal sizes across those. And so I can certainly get behind the addition of school choice seats for Tohoto, and even question whether or not, if we were to have more churn than we currently expect, is there an ability to even bring in additional students into Tohoto at a later date, if we find more students choosing to go somewhere else going into ninth grade, but this kind of last year we looked at this.
What, can you just repeat that?
So right now, we're suggesting 5 additional school choice seats going into ninth grade. If 10 kids decide to not go to ninth grade in Tohoto this upcoming year, can we increase that 5 to 10 at a later date?
It's an 8, right?
I mean, it's not, even if you wanted to, it might be hard to get kids, I guess that's the problem, you know.
That's the question I asked last.
Because it's done on a, you know, it's done on a lot of these systems, so. But if you do the live and you have kids in line, and then seats empty, you can backfill them, so you would be able to do that, if they're in there.
So if we were to hear that there were 12 applicants, and we have 5 that we let in, but we think we have room for 7 more, we can
Then you can
then
back.
offer acceptance to the other 7 we didn't take the one. Okay. So that, I guess that's my opinion on that. I had trouble on the elementary school one. I had a lot of trouble adding out-of-district placements at BES, given the significant extent to which the BES budget is underfunded compared to BNS. I understand class sizes. I look at this beyond class sizes and look at some of the auxiliary services that we're able to provide to students at that school. I think about things like the adjustment counselor or the reading specialists, and if we add additional students from other towns, we limit the availability of those specialists to spend time with the students who are children of tax-paying residents in Boylston in particular. And so it feels to me like we, for a while now, relied on the school choice fund, especially BES, in lieu of having what I think is going to become a continued conversation with the Finance Committee and the people of Boylston around the extent to which we are appropriately funding Boylston Elementary.
You're not wrong about that, but it's a bigger discussion, and I think the discussion is, I know, for example, Boylston, the town is working on their master plan, and at some point, there has to be a discussion in terms of things like building the district, because, letting in a few students from out of the district is really only a drop in the bucket. The bigger issue is the building, I don't know if we call it out of control building, but the amount of building that's, residential building that's been done in the town, that will affect it. And the biggest factor is it's how unpredictable it is. You could have one room apartment and have 2 people. You could have 5 kids. And there's no control over that. So one of the advantages of school choice, and one is it does bring in some revenue, and you have complete control over it. And I would say that this discussion that you're talking about, it has to happen, but I think it's a bigger discussion, and I think within a year or so, it's one of those discussions where we would have to have, and it would sort of balance on whether you're even gonna accept school choice kids anymore at all, not whether you're gonna take a couple here and a couple here, because I don't think that really affects it. I think the major focus has to be, is the building, is the amount of building going on in the towns so unpredictable that you can't even take school choice kids anymore, because you don't know what's gonna happen.
I believe we're there today.
I think we're there because some of the bigger projects, the rental projects, those permits haven't been pulled yet, and so that's about 18 months. It's within 3 years that discussion before those things, the permits that have been pulled stop becoming occupied. So the discussion has to, I don't think it's this year, but within a couple of years, and it's not just with us. And it's not just school choice. It's the rest of it. The school choice is a small piece, and it actually helps our budget. It's the other stuff that's not.
I have to disagree on the idea that it helps our budget. It helps our budget short term. It gives us $5,000.
No, I mean, it's a pretty, school choice is a standardized program in the state. Everybody has it for the most part. And matter of fact, the program is designed in a way that is designed so that if you don't vote for it, it stays. So everything about the program is designed to be kept in place. So for example, if you didn't vote on it, it would be, the assumption is that it goes. And if you voted, if let's say you voted to do it, and then you said, we changed our mind, you have to do that vote by June 1. The reverse case isn't true. If you decided to do it and then say, we don't want to do it, or we do want to do it, you voted not to do it, then you say, I think we do. You have to the beginning of the school to do it. So the whole program is really set up to encourage school choice. And we're not like an outlier with it.
We are limited. Shrewsbury doesn't do it, Oakport doesn't do it.
We're not an outlier with school choice in the state.
I'm saying this area.
The Shrewsbury has 28 kids in their elementary classroom, so
Yeah, I mean, they're at a point where they're, you know, when you've got class sizes that big, we're at a very different place than they are. And I'm not saying we don't have the discussion, but I'm saying we're not an outlier, I know that, and in the state. And, you know, it's money that we do use. I'm not saying the discussion doesn't have to be had, but it has to be a bigger discussion than just this, and it has to involve the town. If you can't control what's happening in the town, then you'll never be able to control the enrollment. You know. Yeah.
Yeah. I would say, longer term, there's a difference between longer term, and maybe longer term is like not even that far, like it might be FY '24. I think that we're, I mean, reliant in a way on this right now. We've already reduced it a bit. I think longer term, even, you know, I shouldn't say longer term, but I think that for FY '23, we already have such a significant gap, and we kind of factored in some acceptance of school choice students. And that's not to say that it's not possible to surmount it, but I do feel like it would be helpful to take one more year of what the principals recommended, and would help prevent too much erosion and allow us to plan in next year's budget with less use of school choice. But longer term, I agree with you. Like, I feel like the state should have increased 5,000, it should have been increasing every year, and it wasn't, so.
But that, you know, that discussion's been going on for a long time, so the chances of that happening, I mean, that's an argument.
Right.
I mean, I don't disagree with what you're saying, but I think that, as Bob says, we do, it is something that we've come to rely on, and the reason we have to have the discussion with the town is because if the money isn't coming from school choice, it's got to come from someplace else.
What's the balance of the school choice funds at BES right now?
BES is the smallest of the three schools off the top of my head. BES, it's in the ballpark. I can probably look it up and come the ballpark time back to say 300,000. We're going to overspend. If we don't accept any school choice students, I think we take in 15, spend 153, so it'll be gone pretty quickly. But, you know, ratchet it down in next year's budget, and if you accept these, you probably don't need to accept any more in FY '24.
Yeah, you know, I think the plan has to be, if your enrollment is going up because we have Delta, then it's a phase out. You know, how do we phase this out? So how do we phase school choice out over a few years, and then increase that, and use it another revenue source?
The numbers I have in front of me don't look like we're facing an out bill, because currently at BES, there are three.
No, we're not,
students.
no, we're not.
Right, there's 3 school choice students in BES right now, they're all in 5th grade next year. And we're being asked to approve 8 additional students in BES for next year. So we're increasing it.
So 8 would be 40,000, and that would be, those 3 will drop off, and you'd have 8 would be 40,000 in revenue. You don't necessarily need to take more. The following year, you have that 40,000 in revenue, and you can reduce what you're spending, and then that 40,000 will drop down over time. Like that.
What's the
that's-
real cost beyond 40,000? What's the actual cost to
Well, in theory,
kids,
it's not-
teachers, attention, time?
Teachers already have a classroom, it's one more student. The idea for school choice, the idea was founded on was that, you know, you have districts, like, we had 1 year where Berlin had like 24 kids in a grade, 2 classrooms of 12, it's like, it's not efficient.
That's one of the draws of Berlin, isn't it?
I don't know about 12 in the class, I mean, there's people who say.
Parents maybe.
I mean, I won't say I'm an expert on this, but there's different studies that say something about, you know, is it good to have that small class size? And, you know, you can go look up, probably find studies and decide it. I don't think that one, you know, you go from 12 to 13 or 14 in class. I don't think we're
No,
straining
there's no,
resources to the teacher.
there's no significant research that says at those levels that there's a significant improvement in learning. I mean, if you're talking 26, 27, 28, that's a different story, but not with those.
There is an increment too, I should have added, you know, if there's needs beyond, you get more than 5,000, there's a special ed increment for additional services that you can provide to the students. So if we had a student with additional needs, it would, you get more than 5,000.
And I just want to reiterate, so I do a lot of the reporting on some of that stuff and helping out with special ed and school choice. And I did hear that fear of what happens if one of these kids is an out of district. And an out of district placement would pretty much be dollar for dollar in terms of what we would get reimbursed. So if a school choice kid came in and did end up being an out of district placement, there would, that school choice money comes from the town that, so again, if the placement was 125, we'd receive 125 in school choice for that kid, not just $5,000.
And they might even revert back, I thought they might even revert back eventually to become the other district's student. Programmatic, other districts programmatic responsibility, I'm not really sure about that.
The programmatic responsibility for a school choice student would stay with our district.
Even 2-3 years later.
That would be
Okay.
the sort of the standard. There are always exceptions, but that would be the standard is that programmatically we would remain responsible.
Theoretically, if we didn't approve the 8 additional students at BES and didn't have that $40,000, could you theoretically dip into that school choice fund another $40,000 to make up the difference? Or would that require us to revisit the whole budget?
Those two would only be 10,000.
There are 8.
Oh, I they were just questioning the new two that they added.
Questioning all that.
Gotcha.
No, those aren't factored into FY '23.
Well, I would assume we're gonna have some revenue coming in.
Right, but he's asking a very specific question.
If you didn't have those 8 and didn't have the 40,000 in revenue, could you make up for that by dipping deeper into BES's school choice reserve?
Well, we probably wouldn't go deeper into it. The budget uses 153,000 in school choice. What we would end up with is just a lower balance in the school choice fund and less time to get school choice usage out of the budget. So the 153,000 that we're using in the budget in FY '23, you might need to plan to bring that down to 50,000 in FY '24. It's $100,000. So that, the town might say, well, if you're gonna have a $100,000 increase in the budget, we don't want to support any more increases. Right? I just think it's the pace of the reduction that is going to be the challenge for the town to absorb.
Yeah.
See, I guess I'm less concerned about that, because I do believe that if the public in Boylston are made to understand what the actual per pupil expenditures are at BES and how far below the state average and below the EMS those are right now, that there would be town support for fixing that problem more quickly than we might be thinking it can be fixed. Right now, the per pupil expenditure at BES is something around 14.5. It's around 18.5 at BMS. The state average is around 16.5. If we wanted to get BES up to just the state average, we're talking about another $600,000 a year on the BES budget. $5,000 at a time of school choice is not going to fix that problem. And to your point, Jeff, right, this is a longer conversation and one we need to have more broadly in the town. But I struggle once again to try to continue to band-aid this situation where we seem to have a structural, not enough revenue coming in to BES to make up for the fact that we've got new lots being clear cut right across the street from the school just this week.
Yeah, no, I don't disagree with that, but I still think that I think that you can do both of these things at the same time. So there's gonna be a point where we stop this, so let's have the discussion before, we're in a place where, we take a revenue source that we rely on and just cut it out. Let's have a big discussion about this while we still can. This is really the first time we've kind of had this discussion. And we've been talking, at least for a couple of years, when we do the enrollment reports, that this is getting very difficult to predict. And now we're having, more rental units and stuff. So I think we're having really the same discussion. It's just a matter of, you're a brave man. You just want to cut this whole thing. And I get that. So I get it. And I get why you want to do it too, because there's a, I know where you think the responsibility lies for this, and I get that. But I think, I know Bob feels the same way. We have the longer-term discussion and say, listen, we're phasing this out. And here's why we're facing this out. So, get ready for it, or however you wanna, present that to the town.
It also represents a safety net. We don't have a stabilization fund like town does, so, you know, ACES had problems arise in the school, like financial problems arise in the school the last few years, and knowing that we have a school choice balance as a safety net is helpful. We also have a special ed reserve that we only have 50,000 in. That would be nice to build that up, but I feel a little bit like it leaves the school at risk if something comes up unexpected. I feel like by moving forward one more year, it maintains a bit of a safety net, and then you ratchet it back as we go forward. And
But those are discussions, those are discussion points to basically say, no, we want to have school choice. It does provide that safety net. But if building is going to be out of control, we need to have room for our own students. So those are legitimate conversations.
Not only room, we need to have more people in the building.
Oh, yeah, no, all of that, yeah.
So what does this do to the class next year? It brings it to 50 kindergarten, is that what, what's that? And there's what, 2 classes?
Right.
This-
To Mike's question there, as I look at these numbers, it looks like we have 3 classes in every grade level except second might be 2. Is that right?
Yeah, and that brings up another point. We could, one of the things on above level services this year, if you remember, was a teacher at BES, which we took out. And basically said we can, ACE can move some teachers around for 1 year. But that'll be one of the items in next year's budget. It'll be the first thing on the district improvement plan, because after this year, these classes will be too big to have. So we went from when I came here, I don't think we had, I think there were probably 3 classes that had 2 teachers, and now within 1 year, all of our classes will have 3 teachers. So, that's the other issue. Next year, we'll need 1 teacher, at least 1 regular ed, probably another special ed teacher, given what we're seeing.
And if I'm correct, and maybe Janelle or Carl, correct me if I'm wrong, or Jeff, that teachers don't necessarily enjoy being bumped around grade levels year to year, right? They prefer to be a second grade teacher,
Here's one.
third grade teacher. I mean, my mom was a second grade teacher for 25 years, we couldn't pay her to go to 4th grade, I know that, right? So bumping teachers grade levels, I know can be disruptive as well.
Our principals don't like to do it either, right? But the situation, so. But within 1 year, that will, that's one of those things that will have to change, so. And I want to get it, we just got the FY23 budget, and we're already thinking about FY24 issues that we know are, coming down the pipe here.
Yeah, so I guess as a result of the conversation here, Ray, I can get myself able to vote to add these 8 seats, I guess with 2 personal caveats to that vote. One is that we as a district establish a finance and budget subcommittee next year for the school committee, so we can be more involved in this earlier on. And then secondly, that we inform throughout the course of next year that the Boylston Finance Committee in town, that we're moving in the direction we're going to have to reduce and eliminate school choice coming into Boylston and Berlin based upon the continued growth and serving that that brings year to year within our classes.
Yeah, and it isn't really the growth as much as the uncertainty. Right? We can't, it's difficult to plan. And as I said in my enrollment report, there are 2 factors that make forecasting enrollment difficult. One is unprecedented growth, and the other one is a small district. We have both of them. And we have both of those conditions. So. But I do agree, and I know I've talked to Bob and Carol about this, that discussion on school choice does need to happen with the towns. And I don't know what the master plan is, I don't know where they stand on that, or if the building is still working in progress.
It's a work in progress. Anyone else have any questions or?
I can agree with Adam too, and I just think this really quickly, that it's important to confirm on this. Because then kids learning all those additional resources to take from taxpayers. it won't get concerning. At this level, at the high school level, I can see definitely need for school choice.
Berlin will see the same kind of issues as classrooms start to grow.
Yeah,
You know, we're already starting to see that, and it's a very small space. There's not even the classrooms as much as the common areas. You know, like common areas, the cafeteria is very small, so, yeah, so we'll start. This is more immediate, there's more building going on for us, and that's for sure. And I think I mentioned there's like 60 rental properties going in.
Well, when the town approved, my understanding, when the town approved some of the commercial buildings, it was with the expectation that it was going to generate additional tax revenue, which we assume means it's either going to be tax revenue, or we're going to start to see investments in the services that we need in our town. And I think that there's a strong argument to be made that the town of Boylston should be doing more to fund Boylston Elementary. We even think about things like needing $300,000 to put air conditioning in that school to, you know, the comment that was made earlier. We know what it's going to cost, we just don't have the capital money, but the town of Boylston would need to decide whether they want to come up with that via whatever process that takes.
Start with the hand.
I mean, I do want to just point out to you that we have a 10% budget increase for Boylston Elementary this year, so that, you know, we talked about the gap. I think you mentioned 650,000, I don't remember exactly, but I know it's something like that sizable, and that gap is closed. I mean, when we looked at this 4 years ago, Boylston was bottom 7% of the state for equal spending, and they, you know, we kind of gradually kind of brought the investment up. Not to say, I would say there's still a gap, but we're certainly getting closer to the median. With this increase, they're probably more than half of that gap is closed. You do have a potential big commercial development similar to FedEx coming on board potentially in 2 years. I would recommend talking to the town about that, and maybe even asking, getting some type of agreement about, you know, when that comes on board, like 50% of revenue would like to go towards the school budget and 50% towards the town, or, you know, last time that happened, it was a decision to put some of it towards reducing the tax rate. And ultimately, that's, I think, the income. It'd be helpful to hear, you know, your perspective as a school committee.
I think having a subcommittee of the school committee that's focused on this stuff will help us create a vehicle for which to have those conversations with the selectmen, with the town finance committee. I know the finance committee is going to make the decision, but politically there are other people who are instrumental and influential in how the decisions are made.
What's in line with your responsibilities, we probably should have one.
So we have a motion to discussion, so I guess we want to the vote, all in favor?
I would never do patience.
Anyone else decide that?
I'm gonna say aye.
I'm an aye as well, any nays? When you voted?
I vote aye.
Oh, I already missed
I
that.
agree with that.
Okay. So, motion to approve the Tohoto school choice recommendation passes. Yes, I'm sorry, you're right, NPES, well, ES. Thank you. I would like a motion to accept the mentor program job descriptions.
Well,
Excellent. Discussion. All in favor?
aye.
I'm an aye as well. Nay? Motion to approve the mentor program job descriptions passes. I would like a motion to accept the fiscal year 2023 revised budget.
So moved.
Adam, second?
Second.
Mike, discussion.
So can we, can we move into executive session and have a quick discussion on that budget or no?
No, unfortunately, we cannot.
Okay, thank you, Christine.
That was a really good question, Rachel.
Thanks.
Any discussion?
Where does this need to be approved by?
The meeting is.
That's what we're up against, right?
Yeah, it's supposed to be conveyed, we have the support of the towns. They don't anticipate any support if we were to propose an increase.
Move on to a vote. Any discussion, questions? All right. All in favor?
Aye.
I'm an aye as well, nays?
I'm a nay.
The motion to approve the fiscal year 2023 revised budget passes. I would like a motion to accept the accelerating literacy grant funds. Second, discussion.
I guess I'd just like to understand a little more about, to Bob's comment around these grant funds and what goes into getting them. I guess when it was first presented, I didn't realize the competitiveness of something like this. So what does that look like? I mean, where are these funds coming from and how does that process work?
Some of the grants are competitive and they're based on needs of the district where we fall, socioeconomic levels are considered in that. And they're optional grants to apply for. I guess that's the best way to put it. So that's what I think Bob was talking about before, it was competitive. And we may not get the full amount that we request, we may only get a portion of the money we feel that we need. So I wasn't sure how much we were going to get for that one. I wanted the full amount we needed, but wasn't certain. Some of the grants, like the ESSER grants, for example, the Title I, any of those ESSER grants or the Title IIA, Title I grants, those are federal grants, and we typically, they tell us how much we get every year. That's based on formula that they use, that involves money we get from the state and federal government. So we only are allotted a certain amount of money, but we have to tell them then how we're gonna hopefully those funds within 1 month of the receipt.
So then there are likely to be districts that could have applied but chose not to, working to apply for that kind of grant, as well as districts that have applied and not gotten.
Potentially, yeah, and I have definitely not gotten grants.
Sure,
Sometimes
no.
You know, it depends on the number of people that apply, the cost that's available, and the distribution of that, the number of high needs districts that are applying. Large urban areas tend to get very substantial funding. When you look at our ESSER grants, and we're up against districts that are getting millions of dollars on funding. So we'll need to look at how we're going to spend that grant, like an ESSER grant, for example, ESSER 3 grant. It's not a lot of money. Maybe 132,000, but that goes really fast. That's what happens when it's very small and we don't have a large need. I don't know, Jill, you feel to the grants as well.
I actually don't know that I have anything to add to that. You certainly have quite a bit more experience with it than I do at this stage.
Great, thank you.
Any other questions or discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I'm an aye as well, nay? Motion to accept the Accelerating Literacy Grant Fund passes. I would like a motion to accept the annual donation from Energy North of $500 to BMS for science or mathematics programs. Adam, second? Mike, discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
I'm an aye as well. Nay. Motion to accept annual donation from Energy North of $500 to BMS for science or mathematics programs passes. And we already voted for the Tohoto, New York City field trip. We have the first read of the student activity guidelines. Any discussion regarding that? Answer. Our next meeting is May 24th with the possibility of May 2nd meeting prior to that if needed. And could I have a motion to go into executive session for the purpose of discussing strategy for bargaining with the BBEA and not to return to open session?
So moved.
Second.
Mike, roll call vote. Mike?
Aye.
Adam?
Aye.
Julie?
Aye.
I am an aye as well. This concludes our meeting. Thank you very much. And good night. Thanks, Sebastian.